Welcome to the Jerry Spoiler Show. I'm your host Ball, aka Mr. Nimbus, and it's time to turn off Nintendo 69 as we're going to be breaking down episode 2 of Rick and Morty season 5. Throughout this video, we'll be going over the Easter eggs, cool little details, and also recapping and reviewing the story. I was taking a holiday in an alternate dimension last week, so at the end of the video I'm going to be going through some of my favourite Easter eggs from episode 1 and discussing my thoughts on the show. Full spoilers ahead, so if you're a little prick like Pickle Rick and don't want anything ruined, then I have no idea why you're here. Smash the thumbs up button if you enjoyed the video, and if you're in, then make sure you click the subscribe button, you son of a bitch. With that out of the way, let's get into Rick and Morty. Okay, so the episode is called Mortiplicity, which is a play on the 1996 film Mortiplicity starring Michael Keaton that too deals with duplicates, doppelgangers and clones. We start off with the family having a meal, only to see that they're ambushed by killer Squid Aliens in a scene that's very reminiscent to the dream one in American Werewolf in London. We then get a reference to werewolves when a version of Rick and Morty watch a TV show called Wenwolf about a time-travelling werewolf. This is playing on who, what, when, where and why to show when in time he's travelling back to, and when the creature warps in, there's a very similar effect to how the Terminator appears. He comes across a vampire who has fled back in time to avoid persecution, as Christianity hasn't been invented yet. The vampire itself is based on the design that appeared way earlier in the series, and this was carried across to the Blade joke in last week's episode. The whole idea of this episode is kind of playing on the notion of body doubles, something that several politicians and public figures have used over the years in case assassins attempt to kill them, or they just had a heavy spoilers birthday party that they didn't want to go to. Now in this intro, they talk about Jerry's job interview, which makes Rick realise something is off. Rick and Morty also say in their next mission that they're gonna go and kill God, the Christian one, because he's been asleep for so long. This is kinda a nod to how the big guy used to get involved in things in the Bible, but has missed out on said birthday party for the last 2,000 years, which I'm not happy about. Now we cut to another family chasing Mr. Always Wants to Be Hunted, who always wants to be hunted. Not only is he one of the worst characters the show has ever introduced, he also looks a lot like a melted Mr. Poopy Butthole. Interestingly, he ends up hunting them throughout the episode at several points, showing what happens when you don't hunt him. Now we think this is the real family, and Rick talks about why he made the decoys. He brings up Space Beth, which is of course a nod to the arc in which we couldn't tell who the real Beth was. She appears later on in the episode as the family seemingly return home, but whether this is the real one or not, we just don't know at this point. Now Diane is also mentioned, and that's twice in a row that her name has popped up, so who knows, we may even see her quite soon. For seasons now, fans have pondered over whether the Rick and Morty that we've been following are actually the original ones from C137. By the end of it, it's going to be impossible to know if this is the case, and I think the creative team are just trolling us throughout this entire episode by making us think that we finally have the real ones before they're killed off. Fans often want to hold on to the theory that we're definitely following the real Sanchez and Smith family, but they've just clearly showed us you can never truly believe that, and this is one of the craziest episodes that we've ever had. We very much end up like the Famalam, not knowing what's real and what isn't, but in the end, does it really matter? Now we next jump to Italy to see the family living the high life, but they're quickly wiped out, and I don't know if it was intentional, but Jerry ends up looking like a pizza that's also on the front of a t-shirt in one of the suitcases. Yes, it's a reach. Now interestingly, Rick hasn't drank alcohol so far in this season, so maybe the guys went teetotal, or maybe he's not the real Rick anymore. There's also never been any drool around his mouth because of this, and I'm not even sure that Rick burps at all at any point in this season. Also, shout out Seiko Quaso on Reddit for pointing out that one of the passcodes is 80085, which if you look at it could spell out boobs. Now Rick gets Morty to check if he's the real one by looking to see if there's a barcode on his left butt cheek, which might be a nod to the 6th day, in which clones had indicators under their eyeballs to show if they were real or not. Jerry is making lemon squares which are gluten-free, sugar-free and lemon-free. Now they go to another decoy family and discover that they were making decoys. The previous Rick did mention that decoys wouldn't make decoys, and that they also wouldn't go to hide out with another decoy family, which they go to do. They drop a line about decoys not knowing whether they're a machine, similar to Westworld, which is a nod to Bernard and several characters in the show not realizing that they themselves are machines. Upon telling the decoy this, hilariously their head explodes. Now Rick realizes that he has to destroy the rest of the decoys, and the rest of the decoys have the same idea. Summer says she thinks that they're actually decoys, and yeah, it gets super confusing. Like, my brain hurts. Please don't be a decoy definition, Paul. Just please. Now, they go to a home, and from another perspective, we watch as the situation that just happened plays out almost identically. However, the fact that the decoy Rick asks where the other Rick was triggers the third Rick to realize the other decoys are there. I know a lot of people think that this is just the previous situation playing out from a different perspective, but there are some changes to show us that this is something different. The self-termination program is something that Rick has clearly set up so the situation handles itself, but it does lead to a lot of confusion. On the board we can see several circles that represent one family, and they themselves create several other families which in turn create more. Each sort of has their own bubble which was represented on the map, and they don't actually have any idea that a greater number exists outside of this, which is currently killing everyone in said circle. Just don't think too much, brain, you'll hurt yourself. It's in layman's terms, yeah, it's basically Highlander, which in case you don't know involves immortals killing each other so that there can only be one. Beth constantly says that they shouldn't terminate each other, which would actually lead to them living happy and peaceful lives. A bit of empathy would have went a long way, but then we wouldn't have had such an amazing episode. Now Rick warns that stuff is going to get weird, which is what happens when you make a copy of a copy. This is often seen in photocopying and is something that's known as generation loss, in which each time you duplicate something it diminishes in quality. This effect was actually used on the title screen for Loki, and over time it can lead to massive changes and things that are completely illegible. Things do get super freaky later on when we see a Hills Have Eyes / Texas Chainsaw Massacre home, but we'll talk about that later on in the video. Now, in order to disguise themselves, they dress up in ass-smelling squid costumes. And yeah, that definitely looks like now they destroy one of the ships, only to discover that the squids are in fact decoys with way better costumes. Some of these decoys then roll through the country, destroying other decoys, whilst the decoys also destroy each other. We discover that the chip is planted in their brains, and get a nod to the brain scene from the film Hannibal, as well as Rambo First Blood, where Rick blends into a wall. Another nod to Terminator is dropped when Summer cuts her arm with a razor blade, and this is then ripped off, which is something that the T-800 did in the film to show that he was real to Miles Dyson. More on that movie in our episode 1 breakdown later in the video. Now the family are captured by a Leatherface-esque Rick that explains, because Rick is a bit lazy, that the further down the line you get, the lazier the copies do too. There's one that's been skinned alive which says "kill me," and this is a callback to Aliens, in which a character that had a chest burster inside them was strung up to a wall and said the same thing. They're fortunately saved by a kindly wooden Rick who takes them to a sanctuary for the decoys known as the Cause. A lot of families here are missing their Ricks, potentially because he saw that the remainders would head in this sort of peaceful direction and simply didn't want to be part of it. I love how the leaders are also based on ventriloquist dummies, as the decoys are just puppets of the real Rick. Jerry as always messes things up though, and we cut to a family watching the sunset, which is typically a trope used in TV shows and movies to showcase when a character is accepting of their death. They're exterminated by what? Is that the real family? Is that the real one? And it might just be. And he calls out all the decoys using a giant head that's similar to Show Me What You Got, and we see a woven one as well as a block one that I think might be a nod to Minecraft, but I'm not 100% sure, mate, as I've never actually played it, because let's be honest, I spend all my time making these mediocre videos. Anyway, the president doesn't want to get involved because he's realized the Electoral College might just want to keep slavery going. Next, the family arm up, and Beth gets a plasma rifle, Summer gets a double-bladed lightsaber, Morty gets a whip, and Jerry gets a revolver. It leads to all-out war in a hilarious showdown, in which the plan of the decoys all wiping themselves out one by one comes true. However, someone's dressed as Muppets to appear as decoys. They come to the conclusion that Rick is sorry for making duplicates, especially Space Beth, and that he loves the real one. Summer stabs one through the chest, which might be a reference to Saving Private Ryan, might be a reach, but Rick also calls himself a god. At the beginning of the episode, Rick and Morty of course said that they were going to kill God, so it's quite fitting that this episode ends with the death of a god. Interestingly, we can see that one bites down on his tooth, which blows his head off, and if you cast your mind back to the last episode, you might remember that Rick said they all had suicide capsules in their teeth, which he'd planted there for the family. Just as it seems like a happy ending, they're killed by Mr. Who Wants to Hunt Me, who has now become a murderer because no one will hunt him. We jump to a family in space returning with Space Beth, who have just been alerted that a decoy family has been killed. Now I really want to believe that this is the real ones because Space Beth is with them, but in all honesty, who knows at this point? I just don't know. No. Cut to the post-credit scene and we see Jerry varnishing himself, and though Morty was worried it might look like blackface, he does seem okay. However, he's attacked by beavers and used as a crib for their children. Unable to die, he remains buried in the dirt for centuries and is adopted by the new inhabitants of the planet. They do cowboys before Christians, which might show that there's been 2 entire timelines at the very least, in which Jerry has been used and repurposed. It's a hilarious post-credit scene, and probably my favourite in the show so far, but let me know if you disagree or not. Either way, incredible episode, and I'm absolutely loving the season so far. It's been hilarious with these first 2, and I'm very hyped for what's gonna happen next time. Okay, now as for episode 1, I thought I'd do some of the best Easter eggs in it. Now firstly, we catch the pair being chased by a creature that feeds on crystals depicting alternate realities. Not only is there a Blade reality, we can also catch one that shows the original Doc and Marty short that Justin Roiland did for Channel 101. The pair land in the sea and meet a parody of Namor and Aquaman in Mr. Nimbus. Nimbus actually means a cloud or halo surrounding a saint, and I've heard this man gives people heaven in the bedroom. Now he is apparently Rick's nemesis, and the pair end up hosting him over dinner where he smashes wine bottles and shouts another. This is something that Thor did in his first solo film, and that Loki recently did in the 3rd episode of his show. Morty also has Jessica over, and I love how they turn on the TV and see that the last channel was a Nintendo 69 one, which we learn is something that Rick watches all day, so it's pretty funny that he had this on the TV earlier in the entry. Now we discover that Rick has been aging wine up in a Narnia-esque pocket dimension with a family who's headed up by a creature named Hoovy. Due to time moving differently in this dimension so that Rick can mature wine quickly, we watch as Morty removing Hoovy for some time creates a rivalry between the natives that spans centuries. One of the characters is called Bova, which could be a nod to the cow humanoid from Marvel Comics due to them being able to speak and also their clothes. The kingdom they create also resembles Castle Black from Game of Thrones quite a lot, and similar to the characters in GOT standing guard for the White Walkers, the locals spend decades looking over the doorway for when Morty eventually returns. After Morty is attacked, he arms up and comes back, but during this we see as an outcast is recruited by a sorcerer, and they also study a broken blade which looks a lot like the one from Lord of the Rings. After Morty leaves a glove behind, it's discovered similar to the arm from Terminator, and this allows them to advance technologically to the point that they're able to send someone known as a Traveller through, which might be a reference to the time-travelling graphic novel by Neil Gibson. Morty travels back to see an older version of himself that says you're early, which is a nod to the Ancient Ones saying it in Avengers Endgame. It's revealed to be a simulation, and Rick journeys there to save Morty. They find troubled water and end up in too deep, but are saved by Mr. Nimbus, and we learn that Jessica had a completely different journey. She spent years in their dimension to the point that they created AI and were all wiped out by it. The episode ends with Jerry and Beth finally getting their threesome with Mr. Nimbus. Yay! Now as for the 2 episodes, really enjoyed them and had a blast breaking them down for you in this video. Obviously if I missed any of the Easter eggs, then make sure you comment below and let me know. As a thank you for interacting with the video, you'll be entered into a prize draw on the 30th of June, in which we're giving away 3 copies of the Phase 3 MCU box set. All you have to do to be in with a chance of winning is like the video, make sure you subscribe with notifications on, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on the episode. The winners of last month's competition are on screen right now, so if that's you, then message me on Twitter at Heavy Spoilers. If you want something else to watch, then make sure you check out our breakdown of Loki episode 3, which will be linked on screen right now. We've gone over the entire thing from top to bottom, so it's definitely worth checking out if you want to know more. With that out of the way, thank you for sitting through the video, I've been Paul, and I'll see you next time, you son of a bitch. Take care, peace.